talk therapy can often re-traumatize you because you're bringing up these old wounds without any real repair. So that's why we need the somatic piece to it. That's why we need the body piece to it as well. So we get this sort of almost spirit of the body involved with calming the mind, because the body calms the mind much more than the mind calms the body.
Welcome to the Multiple Truths podcast. We're your hosts, Holly
and Brittany. This is a space where we can come together healing in community, where we share our self-love journeys, insights, and wisdom.
A space with no hierarchy or judgment, fostering love, compassion, and respect, and where we honor our differences. With open minds and hearts, everyone's truth is welcome here. We are in this together.
Let's dive into the episode.
Hello and welcome back. You're here with Holly, and today I'm joined with Dr. Russell Kennedy. This episode is so near and dear to my heart. Honestly, just something I never thought would ever happen. Like, I refer to Dr. Russell Kennedy's work all of the time. I look up to his work so much. Because he's a neuroscientist that talks about the power of inner child healing from your anxiety. And I just think it's so powerful to have a neuroscientist talking about the power of inner child work. But I never thought that I would ever be able to have a conversation with him. Yeah, we made it happen. And I'm just so grateful to have gotten an opportunity to speak with him. So I first heard him on the Mel Robbins podcast 2 years ago, talking about the toolkit to healing your anxiety, diving into inner child healing. And yeah, that episode was just so transformative for me and deepening my understanding of inner child healing. I had already been doing inner child work, but that listening to that 2 years ago deepened my understanding and like really changed everything for me to really understand like the power of it on a deeper level, because I'm so passionate about inner child work, inner teenage work. It has supported me the most on my healing journey and coming more home to myself, learning more about myself, learning how to understand my wounds and go back and reparent these younger parts of me and allow them to feel seen and soothed and secure and validated. And yeah, just holding space for these younger parts of me and allowing them to feel what they need to feel. I've had so many emotional releases with connecting to these younger parts and really just like coming more home to myself. It's so much a part of the healing journey. But sometimes when I talk about it, it can seem kind of woo-woo, not rooted in science or truth. But to see a neuroscientist emphasizing inner child work is just so powerful. And I'm so grateful to see it, because we need everyone to hear about this work because it's so powerful. Yeah, I used to deal with severe social anxiety. Like, I was so uncomfortable in my own skin. And just as I've gotten older, I've really understood like, whoa, I really struggled with anxiety. And I would just drink a lot in social settings because I felt so uncomfortable in my own skin. I was so sensitive to energy growing up, and just felt so uncomfortable in my own skin. Felt like something was wrong with me. I was so focused on what other people were thinking of me that it was almost like debilitating, like stuck in my anxiety. And just through my healing journey, I've really healed from my anxiety holistically, using some of the tools that we're going to dive into today. And then having those tools in place continually to self-soothe when my anxiety does come up, and like sit with myself and breathe to create that safety within my body and in my nervous system. And you hear Dr. Russell Kennedy talk about your alarm. So I figure out where the alarm is in my body, and I just hold space for that younger part of me. And I'm compassionate and loving and nurturing and reparenting that younger part and just letting her know she's safe, she's loved, she's enough. I understand her, whatever it is that she and I need to hear in that moment, and then come back to, the present moment, to my heart space, to this version of me that is confident and knows who she is. So, just having the tools to help you navigate anxiety, because it is possible to heal from anxiety and not just manage the symptoms. So, if you are someone struggles with anxiety, this episode is definitely for you. And to give you a little bit more background on Dr. Russell Kennedy, also known as the Anxiety MD, He is a visionary physician in the field of anxiety disorders with a diverse background in medicine, neuroscience, developmental psychology, yoga, meditation, and stand up comedy. He has defined the understanding and treatment of anxiety from both scientific and humanistic perspectives. Much of his work is based on overcoming his own lifelong battle with chronic, crippling worry, creating the award winning and best selling book, Anxiety RX, the Anxiety RX podcast, and the more recently MBRX program, a step by step mind body program designed to permanently heal anxiety. Dr. Kennedy is empowering individuals from all over the world to overcome anxiety and embrace a life of calm and fulfillment, which I just love so much. He's so devoted to this work, and you can really tell his passion for it. And yeah, it's just a really beautiful episode filled with so many nuggets. So I hope that you get something out of it. And with that, let's dive into it. Well, welcome, Dr. Russell Kennedy, to the podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you today. How are you?
Good, Holly. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk. Yeah, I refer to you and your work all of the time because
Nice.
I'm so passionate about inner child and inner teenage work. I'm a holistic health and embodiment coach, but sometimes when I talk about it, it can seem kind of woo woo,
Sure.
spiritual, like not really rooted in science or truth. But to see you, a neuroscientist, emphasizing inner child work is so powerful. And hopefully people can really see that. Um, but yeah, I just feel like this conversation is so important, especially today. I feel so many people struggle with anxiety, and it can truly feel like a life sentence. I know it did for me, but it really is possible to heal. And yeah, so I know that you've been using a combination of neuroscience, somatic work, and psychedelics, and you've uncovered a brand new way of approaching and healing anxiety in yourself and your patients, which I also love to hear that you're incorporating psychedelics, plant medicine. I'm a huge advocate for plant medicine, when it's done with the intention of healing.
Sure.
Um, and yeah, I know you teach people how to take back control rather than letting anxiety control them. So I'd love to start there. So, for people struggling with anxiety, how do we begin to truly heal from anxiety instead of just managing symptoms?
I think it's just realizing what it is.
Hmm.
Anxiety in the mind is really just a state of alarm, physiological alarm that's stuck in your body. And it's probably been stuck there since you were a child.
Hmm.
And the brain, through this process called interoception, the mind is always reading the body, right? So if there's this background alarm, this alarm from the background of your life stuck in there, and it's kind of the mind is a compulsive meaning making make sense machine. So it has to do something with that alarm. So it winds up through the default mode network and a couple of other neuroscientific processes. It winds up making sense of this alarm in your body by creating negative outlooks into what could happen in the future. And often, what will happen when we get alarmed is that we will paralyze the rational part of our brain and fire up the emotional part of our brain. So, not only does the emotional part of our brain make more worries, but the rational part of our brain that would tell us that these worries aren't really that real gets shut off. So, we get double whammy. We make more worries, and then we shut off the part of our brain that would actually analyze those worries correctly.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a good place to start understanding what it
Sure.
is. Absolutely. Yeah, and I want to dive into too. Can you share what you found about the connection between childhood trauma and adult anxiety and how the inner child and teenager plays a role in our anxiety? Just so people can really understand that connection, because I think a lot of the times people just think they have anxiety, but oftentimes it's rooted from these younger parts that need to be seen and acknowledged and heard and validated and reparented. So yeah, if you just want to share the connection.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a number of ways that we become alarmed. I like the term alarm rather than anxiety because I think it has more consciousness to it. I think there's a number of ways we become alarmed. There's one way that I see quite frequently with people who didn't have a whole lot of trauma in childhood and say, well, why? I had a normal childhood. My parents are great. They're still together. Why am I so anxious? And then often I will ask them, did you have a separation from your mother, specifically your mother, but your parents before the age of 5? And a
Mm.
lot of them will. And the other way is trauma that we get into our body. It overwhelms our little child mind when we're going through this trauma, whatever it is, parental divorce, loss of our health, loss of our parent, whatever it is. And then that gets stuck in our body because we don't have the repair. If we have parents there to repair it, then that trauma gets dissipated. And often kids that have had trauma and repair do better than the kids who have had this sort of, silver spoon life that don't have a whole lot of trauma, because they build some resilience, because they can see, yes, we can go through trauma, but it gets repaired. So there is this sort of familiarity with trauma, and it gets calmed down quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the last way that I see it is inherited family trauma, trauma that just keeps getting handed down generation to generation to generation. So there's a number of ways that this alarm gets into our system. The most common is childhood trauma, I would say. But a lot of people will say to me, I had good childhood and I still have all this anxiety. And I will ask them, did you have a separation from your parents? And, what were your parents and grandparents' lives like? Were they incredibly stressful? Because that gets transposed into you as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes as a neuroscientist and a medical doctor, I want to have a seizure when I talk about this stuff, because it sounds so woo, right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
sounds so weird. And a lot of healing is spirit based. We're mind, body, spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of healing is spirit based. So that's why I have a little bit of a reaction when I see science based therapies, because science based therapies will help you cope, but they won't help you heal, because they don't address the spirit part. And that's the part that really cements your healing, is getting that new connection with yourself, that new connection with the spirit inside of you, with the spirit of the child inside of you. That's
Mm-hmm.
what heals you. You can cope by, doing new cognitive therapies and understanding where this comes from, and trying to use, trying to think positive and that kind of thing. You can cope with that, but it's not going to allow you to heal. And in fact, this positivity movement can actually prevent your healing, because you just don't allow the negative feelings to come up and metabolize them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And I feel like too, something like there's such a difference between like big T trauma and little T trauma. Like for me too, I was like, why am I so anxious? I had a good childhood. I had a roof
Right.
over my head. I had a family that loved me. I had my parents were divorced, but I didn't feel like that really had a big impact on me. And when I started to learn about little T trauma, I was like, oh my God, I've been experiencing little T traumas my whole life, and it started, I feel like, something that I wouldn't even have thought, which I feel like a lot of people don't even think, like it started in school, like in the classroom when I was like in kindergarten, in first
Mm-hmm.
grade. It's like I missed my mom. I didn't feel safe being at school surrounded by all of these children and these teachers who I didn't know. Like I wanted my mom. I cried all of the time in school because I was like, I don't feel safe here. And then also like I also was so, the social anxiety, I feel like I was so um scared of messing up, of getting things wrong. So sitting in the class, I would be so anxious that I would be called on, because I'd had experiences where I'd been called on and I didn't know the answer and children laughed. And then other times where like I would read in school and I would misspell or like misspeak, and I internalized like, and that I was stupid and that I didn't know anything and that I wasn't good enough and like all of that kind of stuff. So that started showing up in my life when I would even go and talk to people. Like when I was in my teenage years, college years, even, as little as like 6 years ago is really when I started my journey. But I realized like even when I would go to speak to people, I'm like, oh my God, how am I coming off? Do I sound stupid? Like, what are they thinking of me? And it would show up in that sort of way. And I was like, why am I so concerned of what other people think of me? And it started, I feel like, from such a young age, which I don't feel like we realize. So have you noticed that at all with people?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the big T and little T trauma, and I'll tell you why.
Hmm.
The demarcation of it. It really depends on how sensitive you are. So
Yeah.
if you're a sensitive child, a
Yeah.
relatively small T can cause a tremendous amount of trauma and alarm in your system.
Yeah.
So I really don't like that designation. I think it's a useful demarcation on some level, but I would
Hmm.
also put it to you, Holly, that the divorce of your parents was a big T trauma. And I
Mm,
think this is what I see a lot of people do when I see them in my practice. They'll say, oh, yeah, my parents got divorced, but, it was amicable and they were great. And, it didn't really bother me that much. Or, yeah, this one guy I had says, oh, yeah, my dad used to beat me pretty bad by the time I from 7 till 12. But, it made me tough. It toughened me up. It made me not take no for an answer. It made me a great salesman. So it's funny
mhm,
how we explain these things to ourselves as children. And we say it so often to ourselves as children. Doesn't
mhm,
bother me. It doesn't bother me. Things are okay. That we actually believe it in adulthood.
mhm.
And I see so many people, to use this big T, little t trauma thing. I see so many people with big T trauma that just pushed it aside and just assumed it wasn't a big deal, but it was.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like just like our minds like to conceptualize things. So like, oh, big T, little t. But yeah, I feel I was incredibly sensitive. Like I was an
Mm-hmm.
incredibly sensitive child. And I feel like a lot of people, we have a lot of listeners who are like on their healing journeys are, empaths, and I don't think we realize like how sensitive we are when we're at that age taking in other people's energy. So like other so much can seem like that being in school, like I feel like the whole experience of honestly like being in school was like a threat to my system because I just didn't feel safe. I didn't, and I don't think I realized like how big of an impact that had on me until I started really diving into it. But yeah, also with the divorce too, I can totally see how it affected me, like
Sure.
I love
How
my
could it
parents.
not?
Yeah, I love my parents more than anything, and I'm
Right.
like, seeing them both suffer in their own ways, and then me just being a little girl trying to, process all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I just think that for me, I was really seeing a lot of like social anxiety. And I linked a lot of that to like obviously my childhood, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big thing where I don't think it's normalized yet. I think it's getting more and more normalized to understand like a lot of anxiety is stemming from young wounds.
Most of it,
Yeah.
probably 90+% comes
Mhm.
from young. There are some parental separations for sure that I will ask people, go home and ask if your mother and father are still alive. Ask them. It's like, oh yeah, we took your older brother to Disneyland when you were 2, and we left you with the grandparents. And it's like, well, I
Mm.
don't remember that. It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
your body does though. So it's really interesting how we minimize this. Not that everything is trauma. I think we really get into this thing in this society. This is trauma and that's trauma. And I think we need to recognize, especially with our sensitive kids, that they need repair more than, say, normal kids would. Like if you
Mhm.
have a really sensitive child, and I'll ask parents all the time, like, which of your kids is the most sensitive, and they'll immediately tell me which one. Like
Mhm.
it's not even a close race. They know exactly which child is the most sensitive
Yeah.
because it's part of our temperament. I think a lot of temperament, I think we're starting to see this more and more, is genetic. So a
Mhm.
lot of our sensitivity is genetic. And I think as the society becomes more stressed, I think this is why autism rates are increasing, because
Mhm.
the society that the babies are born into is just more stressed. There's an energy of stress with them.
Mhm.
So, in the 1960s, where a lot of this stress wasn't there, we would develop in a much more peaceful sense. Not that
Mhm.
growing up was ever peaceful, but now there is so much uncertainty in the world.
Mhm.
And I think the kids, even the young kids, are picking this up. And I
Mhm.
think even from birth, they are just more sensitive. And
Right.
if you look at autism, they're very, very sensitive,
Mhm.
oversensitive, and they haven't learned how to prune back their nervous system. So typically what happens around 3 years old is a lot of the connections in your brain peel back. They don't develop. So the parts of your brain that are you, that make you more who you are, develop more fully, and then the parts that aren't you kind of regress. Now in
Mhm.
autism, they think that the parts that regress, it doesn't happen. So they get all this sensitivity, all this stimulation, and they don't know what to do with it because they haven't honed who their brain really is, who they really are in the world.
Mhm.
And this, and I think on some level, it's kind of a metaphor for adult anxiety, is we have too many things coming at us, or we perceive that there's too many things coming at us for us to handle. And then,
Mhm.
of course, that sends our brain into overdrive. We get all this norepinephrine in the brain, we get all this cortisol in our body, and it shuts off the rational part of our brain. So the fearful projections are believed because we don't have the rational part of our brain online that says, hey, this isn't actually real. This isn't actually happening. So it just cycles on itself. And we just get more and more and more anxious if there's no repair. And often the parents are stressed too. Parent working two jobs, mom and dad are both working.
Right.
The parents are stressed too. So there's not a whole lot of that sort of healing energy, that sort of calming energy in the households to start with, which is just creating this. And then you add smartphones on top of everything else. And
Yeah.
it's the perfect storm for just not having this nervous system development that's calm and peaceful.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious, real quick, too, if someone is listening and they're a parent to like a very sensitive child, like what would you recommend they do to support their child?
Lots of touch, I think. I think touch is really one of those things that's sort of underrated in our society. And a lot of cultures, British cultures, Asian cultures, there wasn't a whole lot of touch. There wasn't a whole lot of like that sort of connection kind of
Hmm.
thing. And I think our brains need that touch to develop safety.
Right.
And some kids are very overly sensitive to touch too, so it's a very difficult process to navigate at this point. There's no one size fits all that helps everybody, but I think
Hmm.
touch, I think repair is so important, so when there's ruptures, that there's repair. And this is often hard when you have a child who's very sensitive, because you're repairing all the time, or you perceive that you are, and the parents are already tired. So it's the society we live in now is incredibly stressful compared
Right.
to even 40 years ago. So, and it's showing up on our kids. We're seeing it in our kids, and I
Hmm.
think that the child anxiety that I see in children, say 12 and under, is different than the anxiety that I see in adults. So
Hmm.
we're starting to see this sort of energetic anxiety show up in our kids, that's only being magnified by the fact that they're addicted to their smartphones.
Hmm. Yeah. It's such a societal issue. It's like it's the systems that we have in place that aren't supportive for people. And I think we're really going to see the effects of that,
We are
like
seeing the effects
it's,
of that.
yeah. And it's just
Yeah.
going to continue until things start to change, which I just feel like that's why I feel like these conversations are so needed now more than ever, because it's like we need to bring awareness to this so we can start to shift it. But again, it needs to happen on such a large scale,
Mm.
so yeah, it's going to take years. It's going to take years, but I feel like we're
Yeah.
really starting a movement, hopefully.
Well,
Um,
human beings don't tend to do anything until it gets really bad. So right
yeah,
now we're in a very difficult, with the United States the way it is, and the Canada-U.S. relations, and the worldwide relations.
right,
you know, it takes something pretty major before we actually make a shift. Like if you look
right.
at after World War II was a pretty major shift. People
Hmm.
decided, I don't want to be like this anymore. People came together. That's one of the reasons why I think our society is so sick, is we're so separate from each other,
Right,
both interpersonally, like between people interpersonally, and within ourselves. We're separated from ourselves, because I think that's the hallmark of emotional dysregulation, anxiety, depression, OCD,
hmm,
eating disorders. Ultimately, it's a separation from inside of you.
hmm,
And as you
yeah,
can correct that separation from inside of you, those things just resolve on their own. And I think
hmm,
that that's what we really need to look at, is finding these ways of connecting within ourselves. And one of the ways we do that is connecting with other people. But we're not doing
right,
that anymore. We're actually getting
yeah.
more and more separate from other people all the time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, I've heard from other like intuitive mediums too that, we're going through a 10-year dark period. We've been through 6 years. We've got 4 more years to go, and things are going to like, it's going to get really dark until we see what we've created. And then change is going to have to happen. But I don't know. Yeah, we'll see if that
Who
comes to
knows? Yeah, I
fruition.
hope
But
so. I hope
yeah,
that's the case.
I
I mean, I don't
really,
hope for 4 more years of darkness, but I think that we need to find a way
yeah,
that the human currency increases, because the currency that we have as human beings, the respect that we have for other human beings, is dropping by the moment. And if you
right.
look at the way, women are being so much more sexualized now, and then they're sort of taking control of this in things like OnlyFans and that kind of, and some of them are making millions of dollars a year, but
Hmm.
we're also eroding our young men at the same
Right.
time. So
Right.
it's really this sort of societal dysfunction, separation, and
Hmm.
ultimately like separation from inside of yourself, because the young
Right.
men are separated from inside of themselves, and the young women, I think, even when they're making $12 million a year, I think there's some sort of internal disintegration that happens when you sexualize yourself like that. I think there's, you know, and I, do what you want. Like if
Hmm.
that's what you feel is the best for you, go ahead. But just understand that you are probably not creating a deeper connection with yourself, even though monetarily you're gaining all this money. And I think that's a metaphor for society in general, because as
Right.
we chase money, we generally push our relationships away. So you see these CEOs that are working, 80, 90, 100 hours a week. They don't have a family life. Even doctors,
Mhm.
a lot
Mhm.
of my colleagues, and this not so much now, but years ago, would spend 80 hours a week being a doctor, and
Mhm.
they wouldn't have much of a family life. So you'd see, doctor of the year, and the sort of the muttering with for the rest of us was kind of like never sees his family,
Yeah.
she never sees her family, right? So
Yeah.
there's always a cost to this, and I think this whole business of anxiety really is this sense of separation.
Mhm.
And the healing of anxiety is basically bringing yourself back together. I like to say
Yeah.
that adult self and child self are separated, and your
Right.
mind and your body are separated. This is what causes anxiety or any emotional dysregulation. So
Yeah.
what we have to do is we have to connect your adult to your child, and we have to connect your mind to your body. When we do that, we start creating the pathway to healing. It doesn't happen right away, but at least we're on the right track.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Just to go off what you said, I feel like we've put so much value on money and we're doing things like out of integrity just to make money because that's
Yes,
what we've seen
totally.
is that's what success is. But I truly believe success is like learning how to love yourself and come more home to yourself.
Yeah.
Like I'm so deeply devoted to helping people come home to themselves and reconnect to themselves because I feel like that's why we are in the mental health crisis. So many people are disconnected from themselves, disconnected to others. And it's like we heal together in community and we have to learn how to come home to ourselves, learn how to love ourselves fully and completely. And yeah, my program that I have is the journey back home to self and it's deeply devoted to helping people learn how to love themselves, reconnect to these younger parts, all of that cuz that's where the power is, that's where the healing happens. That's how we, come home to our authentic selves so we can be who we are and not be living so like in anxiety and fear and worry, like letting that be there, understanding it, and then coming back to the heart and learning how to like self soothe yourself and like see
Hmm?
these younger parts. So, yeah, I want to dive into so you talk about anxiety as the alarm in the body rather than just like a mental issue, which I totally agree. So, how can someone recognize where their personal alarm is located in their body and like once what do they do once they find it?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is both. I mean, we are cognitive beings. We have these huge prefrontal cortices in the front of our brain. So we're very cognitive beings, but we're also very feeling based. And I think most of the therapies that we've been using for the last 40 years have been very highly left hemisphere, very highly cognitively driven. There is this feeling like, oh, if I understand what happened to me, that automatically the puzzle pieces are just going to shift and go back into position. When often, talk therapy can often re-traumatize you because
Mm.
you're bringing up these old wounds without any real repair. So
Right.
that's why we need the somatic piece to it. That's why we need the body piece to it as well. So we get this sort of almost spirit of the body involved with calming the mind, because the body calms the mind much more than the mind calms the body.
Mhm.
But we've missed that in therapy. So we've missed that in this sort of left hemisphere cognitive money, money, money society, accomplish, accomplish, accomplish society. And it's really, coming back to yourself, finding that younger version of you. Now, there's a lot of resistance to that because the child in us holds all our pain. So the adult doesn't want to go back to the child because the child holds all the pain. And the child looks at the adult in us and goes, you've been abandoning me for many, many years. So that
Mhm.
separation just gets wider and wider and wider. And the alarm grows more and more and more. So I think it's just understanding that anxiety in the mind is really just this sense of alarm in the body. And the alarm in the body comes from a sense of separation, probably from many years ago, when your parents divorced, or when you were, had an alcoholic parent or an abusive parent or whatever. This is where the alarm comes from. And because you had no repair at the time, that alarm got more and more stuck inside of you. And the brain compulsively wants an answer. So it just creates more and more worries and more projections of the future to try and protect you. So anxiety is really trying to protect you at its core, but
Mhm.
it's just creating all these scary stories that just create more alarm. So you get in what I call the alarm anxiety cycle. So the alarm is this pain that was pushed down in you from the time you were a child, which creates the worries of your mind through interoception. And then the worries of your mind create more alarm in your body, and then you get in this alarm anxiety cycle. And once you get into that cycle, it's very, very difficult to get out, because anxiety is really two things. People think anxiety is like, oh, I'm worried. No, it's actually more than that. Anxiety is two things. It's the alarm stuck in your body, and it's the worrisome thoughts of your mind, and they feed on each other. So if you can separate the two of them, you can start to heal. But until you separate the two of them, that cycle is so automatic and so grooved that it will run your life.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think I always say too, like, the mind cannot solve the mind's problems, and
Yeah.
when we're stuck up in the mind, like ruminating in the mind, it's like such a big indicator that we're disconnected from the body. So such a powerful way to start getting out of the mind back into the body is like taking those slow deep breaths. Like I like to place one hand on my heart, one hand on my belly, and do like long deep belly
Yeah.
breaths to like signal to my nervous system that I'm safe, like signal to the body that we're safe, because I feel like when anxiety is coming up, it's like you're in that survival
Yeah.
mode, survival response. And I find that a lot of like I hold a lot of tension in my chest area, so like I breathe into that space. But when people are trying to like find their alarm, is it just really like breathing into their body to create that sense of safety and see like what part of their body is like trying to speak to them in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I created my MBRX course for exactly this, and there's a video in there that's a meditation, and it's also how to find that alarm.
Mhm.
So I tell people, when you're caught in your worries, and you find that you're caught in your worries, which isn't an easy thing to do, because when you're caught in your worries, you're in this sort of limbic, emotional, non-conscious, dissociated place.
Right.
So from that dissociated place, it's hard to see, oh, I'm actually caught up in worry right now. But if
Mhm.
you do, I tell people, move out of your head and move into your body.
Mhm.
So, you know, put your hand on your chest to start with, and just see if you can focus, just have this sort of soft focus on your body, and see if there's an area that kind of lights up.
Mhm.
In me, it's in my solar plexus. It's hot, it's sharp, it's crystalline, it's purple. It pushes up in my heart, it pushes back into my spine. I've known my alarm for a long, long time now. So when you first notice it, you may notice like this pressure in your throat. And then I'll ask people, is it superficial, or is it deep? Or does it have a temperature? Is it hot? Is it cold? And the funny thing about alarm is, because it's coming from the unconscious part of us, it can be icy cold and boiling hot at the same time.
Mhm.
So I see that quite frequently in people. This sort of, it doesn't make cognitive sense the way the alarm feels. So it's really just, when you catch yourself in worry, breathe into it and say, okay, where is this? Like, where is this in my body? Almost always it's in the midline. Just the
Mhm.
way the brain is structured, there's a part of our brain called the insular cortex, which is deep in the center of our brain. And it kind of maps the body onto the mind, and it maps the mind onto the body. So when you go through a breakup and you have the heartache, and you actually have pain in your heart,
Mhm.
it's your insular cortex that's actually mapping that pain onto your heart. So when we understand the sort of the neuroscience behind that, this alarm had to have a place to go. And the way it works is that you experience a trauma that's too much for you to bear as a child. Your parents are getting divorced, you're getting bullied, whatever it is. It's not repaired. So it gets pushed down into the unconscious mind. Now, the body is a representation of the unconscious mind. So it gets pushed down into the body if it's not repaired. So, and it stays there. And then you can find that and track that. Now, some people have it in more than one place. Most people have it sort of located in one sort of central place. And like I said, because the insula in the brain is a central structure. Usually it's mapped onto the central part of the body from somewhere between your chin and your pubic bone. I
Mhm.
have seen it with people like shoulders, hips, but usually it's in the central part of the body somewhere. And then it's finding it. And then, is it superficial? Is it deep? Is it hot? Is it cold? Does it have a color? Does it have a shape?
Mhm.
What size is it? And then the more you drill down into that, the more you actually have some hooks into the actual feeling. And you actually have a connection to the younger part of you that made that at the time. So that alarm is actually a real life present day conduit to the younger part of you that was getting bullied, that was getting hurt. So you can use that sensation of alarm to connect directly with the younger version of you. And the reason why people go up into their heads is because that feeling of alarm is so painful in their body, they
Mhm.
dissociate. They
Yeah.
want a way to, and since you're a child, that was the only way of getting around it, was going up into your head with worry. But you're
Mhm.
not a child anymore. But the amygdala doesn't know that because your amygdala has no sense of time.
Yeah.
So a lot of major anxiety is an age regression.
Mhm.
So when I see people in real deep anxiety or panic to some extent, but mostly just anxiety, it's an age regression. They've gone back to their 8-year-old self when they're walking
Mhm.
home from school and they don't know if their dad's going to be drunk.
Mhm.
So you can use that as a conduit to go back and do the repair now that you so badly needed back then. That alarm actually provides you with a way, like a portal in time back to the place where the alarm happened. So you can actually start doing that repair now that should have been done back then. And I'll just add one more thing onto that because I have this
Mhm.
acronym called SHOULD, which is
Mhm.
basically this is what you should have got when you were younger. So S is for,
Mhm.
for seen, should have been
Mhm.
seen. H is for heard, should have been heard. O is for open to, have parents that are open to you, that share parts of their lives with you. It's not like they're just this authority figure. Understood, loved, and defended. Seen,
Yeah.
heard, open to, understood, loved, and defended. That's what you should have got when you were younger. So when you find that alarm in your body now, that's what you should give them. You should see the alarm, hear it, open to it, understand it, love it, and defend it because it is a version of your younger self. And that's my
Yeah.
little rant.
I love that so much because I read the book Happy Days and I had already started learning about inner child work, but Gabby uses the 4 S's: seen, soothed, safe, secure.
Yeah.
Is that's like how to like reconnect with the inner child. But I love the should acronym that you just used. That's so beautiful. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by The Beehive. Holly and I created this online space with such deep intention because we know how lonely and isolating the healing journey can be. And what we've truly come to know is the importance of a safe community that understands you. We've both experienced the power of being witnessed, held, and supported, and that's where true healing happens. The Beehive is a grounded, heart led space rooted in connection, reflection, growth, authenticity, and self love. It's a community built on grounded spirituality, not bypassing, but coming home to yourself through your body, your truth, and your lived experience. While we honor the magic of the mystical, we also know the importance of staying rooted. Inside, you'll find real tools, embodiment practices, and a community of like minded people who get it. It's a safe space where all are welcome, where your wisdom, your struggles, and your growth are honored. If you've been craving a down to earth space to heal, grow, and feel supported, we'd love to welcome you into the Hive. Only $22 USD a month. Link in the show notes to join. We hope to see you there.
And I feel like yeah, it's painful, I feel, to go into these things, and that's why a lot of people dissociate. We have so
Yeah.
many external things that we turn to. So I deal with a lot of women who deal with emotional eating, binging. So when uncomfortable emotions come up, it's like, okay, let's turn to food, let's turn to alcohol, let's turn to drugs, let's turn to social media, work, sex, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But the healing, I feel, truly happens when we learn how to sit through the uncomfortable and like breathe through the uncomfortable and see what needs to be seen, that younger part of you that typically needs to be seen, and also feel what you need to feel. Because oftentimes under that, like I know for me specifically, like, and women that I work with, it's like, okay, let's like sit with what's coming up. Okay, what are we feeling right now? Not feeling enough, not being seen, not being understood, and like validating that,
Mhm.
seeing that younger part of you, like that's so valid and that's so hard. But like reparenting in that moment, being that nurturing, loving energy to yourself of like, but I see you and I've got you and I understand you. It's like really being that nurturing maternal or paternal energy to yourself. And I think so often we speak so negatively to ourselves, and we don't.
Yeah.
Compassion is something that you have to reach out and learn how to do. So I think it's like learning how to sit and be compassionate to yourself, and then like allow yourself that space to feel what it is that you need to feel, because that's where the most healing for me has happened. And I know for a lot of people, like we have to feel through the body to heal. We have to feel to heal. And I feel like that's what I think talk therapy misses, and what somatic work is so powerful for, which you had mentioned too. It's like we have to feel these emotions because they've been stuck in our bodies for years. So actually allowing yourself space to cry or to scream or to yell or whatever it is that this younger part of you needs to do in order to feel seen, it feels like, and creating a safe container for that younger part of you to feel safe enough to feel. Because I just feel like, yeah, there's so much power in seeing that younger part, validating them, and feeling what you need to feel in that moment, and then coming back to the present moment, to yourself, to your, who you are, to your heart. um yeah, I'm curious if that's kind of what you've seen to, like, when you're coaching your patients or with your patients, is there like a lot of emotional releases that come through?
Sometimes, you
Mhm.
know, here's the thing, like this thing about, sitting with the pain. I think it's really important to be able to do that. I think some people just sort of go, okay, I've got to sit with this and I got to, feel. I think there's a real benefit in going in and coming
Mhm.
out and going
Mhm.
in and coming out. So this thing about, I think people have this idea that I have to sit with the, physical, emotional, sexual abuse, the pain of that. I have to just sit
Mhm.
with it and stay with it. It's like, no, actually, in a way, you're kind of re-traumatizing yourself if you just
Mhm.
force yourself to sit with it. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll say, what was the very best time in your life? The very best time in your life, and then have them describe it in detail. Okay, how did that feel inside of you? How did that feel when, you found out you were pregnant and you've been trying for 2 years? How did that feel? It's like, okay, now let's take that sensation and let's mix it with the, bullying when you were 12 years old. When the other girls kind of, ganged up against you and decided that you were persona non grata. Let's go into that feeling. Now let's pendulate back and forth between those two feelings. The other thing that I will do with my people is I'll do this process I call commiserating. And it's in a quiet moment when you're not overly alarmed, although you can do it when you're alarmed. Just say to yourself, hey, what was it like? It must have been really hard for you when the girls were ignoring you or everybody got invited and you didn't. And just wait and just see and know that this is going to light stuff up. This is also something that I use to help people find their alarm too. So
Mhm.
if you had experiences where your parent was an alcoholic or abusive or whatever, it's like, okay, can you go into that experience and say to the younger version of you, that must have been really hard for you,
Mhm.
and see what comes up for them and see where it comes up, because often those intense memories they will sync with the alarm. They will couple with the alarm, and it will start showing you where your alarm is. So, yes, you have to sit with it. I think that's true, but not just sort of grin and bear it.
Mhm.
This is what
Mhm.
this is the analogy that I draw is cold plunges, right?
Yeah.
So when you go into a cold plunge, your body screams at you like, get the F out of the water. Like, this is
Mhm.
just too cold. Like, do not stay here.
Yeah.
But then your prefrontal cortex comes in and says, no, let's just stay for another 5 seconds and
Mhm.
another 5 seconds and another 5 seconds. And you teach yourself over the course of time. It's like, oh, I didn't know that I could stay with this. And it's a real analogy with the alarm, because initially when you go into the alarm, consciously and unconsciously, you don't want to do it. So you will go up into your head. You will start to worry, which is your natural sort of coping mechanism you've had since you were a child. So cold plunges allow you to say, I don't like this feeling. In fact, this is very uncomfortable, but I'm going to stay with it and let it process. So this is
Mhm.
what I see people, physiological medical doctors say there's no benefits to cold plunging. Maybe not physiological, but psychological. I really believe that it's kind of a practice session
Mhm.
for metabolizing that alarm. It's staying in something that is very uncomfortable, but you show yourself you can do it. And
Right.
over the course of time, when you acclimatize to this sense of alarm in your body, when you start going, I don't like this feeling, but I can stay with it to the point where I don't immediately shoot up into my head and start, ruminating and self-flagellating and all those kind of things. Once you start acclimatizing to it, it loses its power over you, and especially the unconscious power to just fire you right up into worrying. So you develop this tolerance to the uncomfortableness of it. You don't like it, but you develop this confidence like, I don't like this feeling, but you know what? I've been here before. It's just a feeling. And
Yeah.
that's minimizing, people that have a really bad abuse. It's unbearable for them to sit with it for any length of time. So
Mhm.
then you really need some sort of help, like either
Right.
psychedelics or a real good somatic healer or whatever. But for most of us who have had sort of kind of regular trauma, you can teach yourself how to stay with it to a certain point, and then just realize, hey, you know what? I am actually getting around the other side of this. It isn't this huge wall, because when you were a child, it was a huge wall. There was no way out.
Mhm.
But as an adult, like, this is the amygdala again. The amygdala will take you back to this place when you're 6 years old and you had no way out. So it automatically sort of references that. And you think today, well, there's still no way out. Well, there is. There is
Mhm.
actually. You're an adult now. You can actually bring yourself into this place of presence with the discomfort long enough so that you learn in doses, you learn how to be able to metabolize it. It's like the
Mhm.
the Princess Bride. I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Princess Bride, but
Yeah.
the guy who switches the poison cups, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it doesn't matter which one the guy takes. Like, they both have poison in it, but
Mhm.
because he's acclimatized to the poison, he doesn't die, but the other guy does. So it's the
Mhm.
same kind of thing. You're kind of acclimatizing to the poison, and in that acclimatization, you gain some real power over the old trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's so much beauty in that process because you're learning how to self-soothe too, instead of needing to turn to external things to soothe you, like the
Hmm.
other things that I said mentioned
Sure.
before. It's like you're learning how to self-soothe and like build that connection back to yourself and have a deeper understanding for yourself because I think so many of us spend years running from ourselves. So it's like even just those small instances of sitting in and just getting curious from a compassionate, non-judgmental lens about like what is coming up for you, like each time you do that it feels like there's like a deeper deepening of that relationship with yourself a bit.
And I
um
just want to jump in there because you said something that's really important. It's like, we do have these coping strategies. So, not to be stereotypical, but this is stereotypical. If one of your coping strategies is shopping,
hmm.
bring your little girl along with you, shop.
Oh yeah.
So
Mhm.
it's if that's your coping strategy, bring her along with you.
Mhm.
So whatever your coping strategy is, bring that child with you so that you're not dissociating from them. You're actually bringing them into something that does give you some pleasure, right?
Mhm.
So it's not like you're not compartmentalizing anymore. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, I love that so much. I love that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I love what you said about cold plunging. That's literally what my husband and I will cold plunge in the Pacific in because we live in
Yeah,
Santa Cruz and we would cold plunge in San Francisco in the Bay. And I was like, I hadn't heard that, but I was like, it feels like it's training you to sit through the discomfort even
totally.
when there's everything in your body and mind is telling you to get out. It's like, okay, let's just breathe. Let's breathe through this uncomfortable. Let's sit here and let's find like that sense of safety, and then like you get used to it and you just sit there. But I think the breath is such a huge component
Yes.
of cold plunging, and that's like a huge component I feel like in healing your anxiety and just being in the discomfort is like doing those deep breaths to like signal to the body that you're safe and like finding that your center in that moment. So I love that you brought in cold plunging because I feel
And I
that
keep
too.
jumping in on you too, but there's another real thing when you were talking there, it was really important too, is
Mhm.
before I started doing cold plunges, I would stand outside the pool or the water or whatever it is, and I would just sort of make the intention
Mhm.
that I knew this was going to be intense, I
Mm-hmm.
knew it was going to be uncomfortable, but the intention was there that I was going to stay with it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really, because if you can train your unconscious mind, even if you make that intention, you're much more likely to be able to stay with it when it actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
So the intention, I think, for cold plunges is so important. Like before you go in, is just make that intention, like 5 or 10 seconds with yourself or longer. This is going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to stay with it. And you're
Mm-hmm.
so much more likely to be able to stay with it when you make that previous intention and kind of train that subconscious mind that you're going to stay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I feel like even with healing, if you're like really wanting to heal from your anxiety, like setting that intention too of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I know this is going to be uncomfortable, but I'm committed to showing up for myself and like sitting through the discomfort and getting the support that I need. And, I feel like
Yeah.
intention is so powerful. Yeah. So I'm curious, okay, maybe for someone that's like struggling with anxiety, they're feeling really anxious, what would you recommend to them like in that moment to help them calm themselves down?
First of all, get out of your head, get into your
Mhm.
body. Even
Mhm.
if it's uncomfortable, find the alarm and sort of breathe into it. Put your hand over it, sort of like do some slow circles around it, really get into the sensation of it. And I have this mantra that I use with people. It's called sensation without explanation.
Mm.
So even if the alarm is painful, which it usually is, and you say to yourself, sensation without explanation, you're staying with the sensation because your go to is to go up into your mind and activate that alarm anxiety cycle, which you will never get out of. And it's very painful. Although it's very familiar for people. And because it's
Mhm.
familiar, they tend to sort of go back into it, but you
Mhm.
never heal that way.
Right.
So it's really making the intention to feel in your body and move out of your head.
Mhm.
Because while you're in your head, you will never escape anxiety. It will
Right.
always run your life. So
Mhm.
it's learning how to feel. And what we were saying before, even if the feeling is uncomfortable, especially if the feeling is uncomfortable. So it's learning when you're going through that anxious phase to put your hand over the area, to breathe into that area, to bring yourself into the present moment sensation. Some people do tapping. I have no problem with that. I don't think there's any magic about tapping. I think it's basically just bringing you into sensation in the
Mhm.
present moment. And if you look at the way your brain is wired, your brain has the most real estate in the somatosensory cortex for your hands and your face. So
Mhm.
if you use your touch your face with your hands, you're bringing yourself into the present moment because
Mhm.
that lights up so much of your somatosensory part of your brain that you have to come into connection with it, which is one of the reasons I think tapping is very helpful. The other thing sometimes I get people to do, although it looks really creepy, is to cross your hands across the midline like this.
Okay.
So, right hand's here, left hand's here, and then just sort of stroke your face
Mm.
because
Mhm.
when you cross over too, it sort of brings the brain into a different frame of reference, and it's impossible to do that. You can't do it at a grocery store because you look like Dr. Evil. You look like really
Yeah.
weird. But if you're by yourself, just putting your crossing your hands and just sort of slowly stroking your face,
Mhm.
um, with compassion and love, that really sort of takes over a lot of the brain power that was previously used to worry, which will
Mhm.
immediately help. But again, it's being able to stay in that discomfort, that sensation.
Mhm.
So if you just do it for 30 seconds and you do that every time, you never really heal. It's like being able to stay with that discomfort for a long time. And
Mhm.
things like commiserating must have been really hard for you when connecting with your coping strategies, shopping, whatever it is that helps you, and bringing the child into that. Again, it's really bringing the adult and the child together and bringing your mind and your body together. And things like yoga and all that kind of stuff. Like I'm registered as a yoga teacher as well. I mean, I think yoga
Mhm.
is a brilliant way of matching your mind to your body, but
Mhm.
it can be a bit of a distraction too. I've seen a lot of people with emotional pain basically blunt it with yoga because yoga is very powerful. So you can if you've got a lot of trauma in your system, you can use yoga as a very powerful coping strategy to kind of paste over it,
Mhm.
but you never actually deal with it. So a
Yeah.
combination of like yoga, whatever it is, tai chi, qigong, whatever sort of mind body thing that you use is great, provided you're doing the work as well. right? And
Mhm.
it's not just, you're not just painting over, you're not just using a coping strategy. So I see this with people. It's like, oh, exercise cured my anxiety. It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
it took away, the major part of it, but the
Mhm.
problem is the anxiety is there because of an internal disconnection. And
Mhm.
that, no matter what exercise you do, and I see this with people too, is that, they used to run 5 miles and it used to work, and now they've got to run 10 miles and then 15 miles and then 20 miles, and which
Mhm.
you can do, but
Mhm.
it's just basically, it's a good metaphor for just running away from the pain.
Right. Like that's like such an analogy of running away from it,
Yeah,
having to run and escape it. So it's
totally.
like the power is like, yeah, going inward. And I feel like sitting with it for as long as you can, and just that compassion, which again, like we are not compassionate by nature. It is something that you have to reach out and learn how to do. But compassion and understanding and non-judgment, I have found with me at least, like that's what really, like nurturing and
Yeah,
being so loving, like actually talking to myself like I would talk to a child. And that's like how I help my inner child and teenager feel seen and heard and validated. And then it's like, okay, we're safe now. You saw me. Thank you. Let's go on, you know? So, and then it'll come up. It's not, I feel like it's kind of like comes in waves, you
yeah.
know?
And we
Um,
heal in waves too. Like, it's,
right,
if you look at neurogenesis and you look at the way that we heal from a neurological perspective, it's not a linear process.
right.
It's like two
Mhm.
steps forward, one step back, because
Yeah.
there's so much resistance.
Mhm.
Here's my big issue with people with anxiety is, like, initially they get better, and then they fall right back into the old groove of worrying again, because as I threaten that coping strategy of worry,
Mhm.
because people see worry as a positive. The child sees worry as an escape.
Mhm.
So when the adult gets stressed, they will also consciously or unconsciously see worry as an escape. So now I'm teaching you to not use one of your escape strategies. So
Mhm.
initially, it can be really hard for the ego to understand that,
Right.
hey, we're not worrying here, we're going into our body, and this is really helpful for us.
Mhm.
But it doesn't feel like that initially. So there is this kind of hump that you have to get over, because when you first stop worrying, there is this fear. And I've had lots of patients tell me, Dr. Kennedy, I frankly, I get really worried when I'm not worrying.
Mhm. It's
So
like
it's
we get
so
addicted.
familiar.
Yeah, I feel like we get addicted to worrying.
We do, and I
Yeah,
can
it's
tell you
like
exactly why.
yeah,
So basically,
explain
I
that.
know I'm sort of hijacking a lot of the conversation here,
No,
but
I love it.
so,
I
so
want
what
yeah.
happens is that when we worry, we make the uncertain appear more certain.
Mm.
Right? So that's what worrying does. It basically makes something that's uncertain. We don't have any idea what's going to happen. It's like, oh, your daughter isn't home yet. It's like, oh, she got hit by a car. Maybe she got abducted. Now, those are horrible thoughts, but in your brain, in the dopaminergic sort of motivation reward centers of your brain, it says, hey, you're on the right track.
Mhm.
That could be actually happening. So
Mhm.
on top of that, we also get these endorphins and enkephalins, the sort of brain's natural painkillers, the sort of runner's high chemicals, when we really scare the crap out of ourselves, when we worry. So
Mhm.
when you worry, you get a little bit of a dopamine shot, for one, and then you
Mhm.
also get your brain's natural opioids into your system.
Wow.
So over the course of time, as a child, that's highly addictive, because it was the only escape that you had when you were a child, was to use this strategy of worry. So it is an addiction. It absolutely is. So it's when you start leaving that addiction, there is a withdrawal from worry. There
Yeah.
definitely is. And unfortunately, what that does is when you withdraw from worry, your alarm goes up. So
Mm.
what do is you go back and, oh, I can't do this anymore. I've got to go back into the old alarm anxiety cycle. I don't like it. It's like that T-shirt that says, I'm in my own little world, but it's okay. They know me here.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know so it's familiar, and human beings will equate security with familiarity, and it's the
Right.
old
Mhm.
Freudian repetition compulsion. What was familiar to you in childhood, you will unconsciously replicate in your adulthood. So if
Mhm.
worry was familiar to you as a child, which it was for me, and it was for many people, we will unconsciously replicate that, assuming that it's helping us. And in a way it kind of does, because it distracts us from the pain of alarm that's sitting in our body.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the comfort of what you know, even if you know that it's like destructive for you. And I feel like
Yeah,
that's where it's like needing to create that safety of like, no, it's safe for me to choose another way. Like it's
right.
safe for me to continue showing up for myself. And I feel like that's where it's like the rewiring of the mind of each time that comes in. It's like, no, it's safe for us to choose another way. And
And we do that through the
yeah.
body, not the mind. Like
Yes.
as you said, we do that through the
Mhm.
body. And
Mhm.
people are trying to think, okay, well, I got to think myself out of anxiety, which is trying to, drink yourself sober or eat yourself skinny. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I wanna just touch on so I know, like, we live in a society that I feel like wants instant results, quick fixes,
Yep.
we're turning it's like, "Okay, tell me what to do, I'll do it, and I better start feeling better tomorrow,"
Right.
But I feel like the healing journey, like, is a forever journey, and healing from anxiety takes time, and, it's like gaining the tools to help yourself if you feel yourself going into anxiety, like, how you can support yourself. We're interrupting this episode to share something close to our hearts, our virtual healing circles. We have been loving them so much and meeting so many of you incredible people through them. Brittany and I are passionate about bringing people together to support one another and heal in community. We felt alone on our paths for so long, and coming together in community has been instrumental to our growth, and we've both seen the importance in it. We aren't meant to do this alone. In unity and vulnerability, we find strength, courage, and support each other on our paths back to ourselves. Our monthly virtual seminars blend discussions, workshops, and practices to nurture your mind, body, and spirit. Whether seeking guidance, healing, or a listening ear, our gatherings offer a safe, inclusive space for people to connect, heal, and grow. Join us on this journey of healing in community. Together, we can heal, grow, and thrive. Register for the next circle using the link in the show notes. We hope to see you there. So, like, what would you say is a realistic timeline for someone to start feeling more stable when they commit to this work, when they commit to like sitting with their anxiety, getting curious,
Sure.
supporting their inner child, that kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the level of trauma that they went through
Mhm.
and their
Yeah.
level of sensitivity.
Right.
So the sensitivity part can actually work for you and against you. The sensitivity part, because you can be more sensitive to yourself as well. And that's one of the things that I tell people with anxiety is that you were born sensitive, but you've been using that sensitivity against yourself.
Yeah.
There's a part of our brain called the default mode network, which our brains kind of fall into when we're not doing a specific task. And a lot of our self-judgment comes from that default mode network. And until we kind of see that this default mode, this when your brain isn't actively doing something, it defaults into you're getting too fat, you think too much, you've got to do this. It defaults into this position, and it's such a hard thing to move out of because your brain has got in the habit. It's kind of like a resting place of the brain,
Mhm.
but unfortunately, that resting place actually holds the inner critic as well. So when
Mhm.
we're at rest, often that's when the inner critic starts firing away at us. That's when we first wake up in the morning. That's when the things start, right? So
Mhm.
it's really understanding, okay, how do I take control over that default mode network and turn it into something, use the task positive network to be able to sort of stay with it. And after a while, you sort of teach yourself to be more, and this is basically the mindfulness. Like, I think mindfulness is a great idea, but just this idea that if you just stay in the present moment, that things are going to heal, it's kind of like the same thing as talk therapy. If you talk about it and you understand it, it's going to heal. It's not. You
Right.
need to be mindful and present, but you also need to connect with that younger version of you as well.
Mhm.
And I see this with a lot of people, developing a coping strategy that works, and then it stops working and they fall apart because
Mhm.
their running doesn't heal them anymore. Their medication doesn't work anymore. And that's the thing about emotional suffering, in a way, is it comes up to the surface so that you have an opportunity to heal it.
Mhm.
At least I'd like to think that's what happens. I'm not
Mhm.
positive that was happening, but basically, as far as time frames go, it depends on the and your commitment to it and your
Right.
ability. You know, there's neuroplastic change in the brain and the nervous system, and some people have more brain-derived growth factor than others. Some people heal faster. I often tell people when they heal, if you can pick up a musical instrument or start learning a new language, because you will start creating a lot of this BDNF, brain-derived neural growth factor, which will facilitate your healing as well. So
Mhm.
you know, the more positive things we can put in the system to be able to heal, the faster we're going to do that. And really, it's learning to develop this confidence in yourself that you will look after yourself, which you probably don't have if you have anxiety, because anxiety makes us victims and it
Right.
turns us into victim mentality. And this victim
Yeah.
mentality is very, very seductive. And
Mhm.
it's easy to fall into that victim mentality. And then once you learn the confidence that you can do this, that you can stay in the cold, once you have
Mhm.
the confidence, then you sort of break out of this, oh, I don't have to be a victim anymore. I don't
Right.
have to sort of default into this victim state anymore, because I know that even if it gets bad, I can still handle it. And
Mhm.
I think that's a lot of why people get stuck in anxiety, is they have this unconscious belief that they can't handle it. And for some traumas, that may be true. It may
Mhm.
be that, we can't get you out of it. We can help you manage it and cope with it. But for most people, I think, healing anxiety is possible. There's no anxiety free life, but I
Mhm.
find with me, I get worries now and I just don't give them a lot of credibility. Like I'm
Yeah.
staying in my prefrontal cortex. I'm able to stay with this feeling of alarm. I'm able to
Mhm.
reassure the younger version of me. That's how you heal, really.
Yeah. Mhm.
Anything else is just coping. And I think there's a lot of things out there that will sell you coping strategies that
Mhm.
do appear to work, at least initially. And this is true somehow with CBT as well, with cognitive therapy, is it appears to work initially. But if you look at the long-term studies, a year later, people are back to just as anxious as they were before the CBT.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just what you said too, like highlighting like there's no one size fits all too. It's going to
No.
look different it's going to look absolutely different for
Yep.
everyone, but it's like, yeah, if you continually show up for yourself, like you've got to be the one to do the work. No one can do it for you. You are your own healer. You are the ones that needs to commit to showing up. And I feel like it's like based off of, yeah, your level of commitment and compassion for yourself. And I just feel like that it is possible though. Like it is possible to
Yeah.
heal. And I feel like, yeah, just doing that deep seated, like emotional work, like I feel like connecting with the body, getting to the root of where your anxiety has been stemming from, feeling these deep-seated emotions, like the embodiment practices, the somatic healing. I feel like then it's kind of like, I feel for me I've done such deep emotional work. Like I've had huge cries, huge shakes, like
Yep.
creating that safety within my body, whereas now similar to you, it's like, okay, it's not that I'm free from anxiety. I feel my alarm system going off. I feel my little girl needs my love and attention. And when I feel that, it's like, okay, I'm going to sit, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to see, I'm going to validate, I'm going to feel what I need to feel, and then I'm going to move on. It's like it doesn't take as much brain power
Yeah.
or like as it used to. It's like getting out of that cycle and having the tools to help you get out of it when you feel it, you know.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's why I created the program, and that's why I wrote the book, and I
Yeah.
created the program and I sell it for like $97.
Wow.
I have business people that say you should sell this for $1,000. Like, no, I want to get this into as many hands as possible, because the traditional therapies, they don't work. And
Right.
it breaks my heart that people are going to counselors, for hundreds of dollars an hour, that they'll help in the short term, but they don't really empower you to heal yourself in the long term. So that's
Mhm.
why I created the program. It's like $97, and basically it tells you everything you need to know in 2.5 hours, and then you have to practice it. There's a yoga nidra in that deep, what Andrew
Mm.
Huberman calls non-sleep deep rest, and
Mhm.
it actually starts to rewire the part of you that resents yourself, and
Mm.
then you start getting some agency and some self-love, and some, which is a term that's used so often, and so I think men really have a difficult time with that. Women
Yeah.
do too, of course, but men do. And it's just basically finding out that we need to rewire systems from the unconscious level. You can only do so much consciously, and like
Mhm.
I said, the body is going to heal the mind a lot faster than the mind's going to heal the body. And
Right.
just understanding, and the Anxiety RX, the book, it's a bit of an encyclopedia. It's big.
Mhm.
I wrote it that way because I wanted to put everything that I knew in there. I'm working on my third book now. That's a lot
Woo.
more concise and a lot shorter.
Mhm.
But a lot of people really relate to the book because their experiences are the same as mine, and
Yeah.
they recognize that as much as I've accomplished in being a medical doctor and an author and a stand-up comic and all this sort of stuff, but
Mhm.
I did it. I was driven by anxiety for a long time,
Mhm.
and it works until it stops working. And I think
Right.
just understanding that when you become your own agency, when you become your own connected self, that automatically heals you. And then
Mhm.
what you decide to do at that point is from your authentic self, rather than the pusher driver that just keeps making you do things that, make you accomplish but don't make you any happier.
Right. Yeah. Real quick, what is your program called just for people that are
Oh, it's
listening?
called your mind body prescription for permanent anxiety healing. The short term is MBRX.
Okay.
So my website, if you go to the Anxiety MD and just type in MBRX,
Mhm.
you'll find it there and that kind of thing too. And I'm really proud of it. I think it's sold like 5,000 copies so far, because
Wow.
it's just it really resonates with people, because it tells them this is where your anxiety is truly coming from. It's not your mind. It's not your
Mhm.
mind, you know?
Right.
And if you try and fix it with your mind, it'll work temporarily, but it's not going to give you any long lasting solutions. And the same
Yeah.
with the book. I mean, the book shows you in using examples from my patients, how anxiety manifests, how it takes your life over, and how you can sort of move yourself away so that you become confident as opposed to a victim.
Right. Yeah, that's so needed. I love that you've created that. And obviously, yeah, it's resonating with people and it feels like your heart is really in it, and
Yeah.
you really stand behind what yeah, and you're a true testament because you've gone through it yourself too. So, yeah, I'm just curious. One last question I want to
Sure.
ask is just for those who are struggling with anxiety, have been struggling with anxiety for years, and they feel like nothing is working. Just what would you say to them?
I think it's just understanding that it's really probably you're not addressing your body. You're not addressing the younger version of you because you're afraid to. And it's
Mhm.
really understanding that sometimes you need some help. Sometimes you need a counselor. Sometimes you need somebody who can help you through that as well. And just go and do it. Like, pay the money to have somebody help you, because you can sit in this limbo for the rest of your life. And I think, we get addicted to anxiety. It's also a familiar feeling. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of the time we equate familiarity with security. So we're not
Mhm.
only addicted to worry, but we're afraid to leave it because it's been sort of a coping strategy for us for a long time. And sometimes you need help. Sometimes you need the help to be accountable, find an accountability buddy. But I think really
Mhm.
understanding what it truly is, which is this state of alarm in your system, and it's not your mind. It's not your mind. Your mind is just reflecting what's in your system. So for
Mhm.
those people that are struggling with anxiety and haven't helped, I would almost be I'm very confident in that you're probably not looking in the right place. And
Mhm.
once you start looking in the right place and gain some confidence, like, oh yeah, this is actually helping and I
Mhm.
can do this, then you start to heal. Because no one is going to, no doctor, no supplement, no one's going to heal you. You have to
Mhm.
heal you.
Yeah.
And until you realize and you gain the confidence, because when you gain the confidence, like I said, you start eroding away that victim mentality that's keeping you locked in worry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I feel like somatic work is so needed. So too looking at getting some somatic therapists or something. I know EMDR therapy is picking up more traction, which I
Yeah.
love because it's dealing with like the mind and the body a bit, but I just feel like we're learning more and more collectively that like we have to heal through the body. Somatic therapy is getting more talked about than it's ever been before, I truly believe. So I just
And we have to find the younger version of us too. Like
yeah.
EMDR kind of does it passively, but really goal directed, intentional, finding
Mhm.
that younger version of you, saying it must have been really hard when you were bullied. It must have been really hard when your dad was abusive. It must have been really hard for
Mhm.
you. So all
Yeah.
this stuff helps, but to really heal, you have to find that younger version of you.
Yeah.
There's no long term healing that I've ever seen that didn't
Mhm.
incorporate that sort of adult self, child self connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is truly like where like almost all of my healing has happened from connecting to my inner
Yeah.
child parts and my inner teenager. And it's been, I mean, I am a huge advocate for that as well. So I hear you and I will preach that until, the day that I die, honestly, as well, because I'm so passionate about that too. I feel like that's the pathway to healing, is connecting to these younger parts. So
And we
we're
need the cognitive part too. Like, it's not that I'm saying, oh, it's just, focus on your body and your body will heal you. No, we need the cognitive part as well. But
Mhm.
what I object to is only using the cognitive part,
Yeah. Mhm.
only using sort of left hemisphere approaches to healing, because that's not going to do it. We need that right hemisphere feeling sense. And we need the
Mhm.
combination of the two of them to start working together. But if we just do cognitive therapy, it will help in the short term, but it actually makes you worse in the long term.
Yeah, it just feels like balance, balance, balance,
Yeah.
balance with everything. Yeah. Yeah. Well, is there anything we missed that you wanted to share?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground here.
Yes,
Thanks.
beautiful.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm happy to share anything that, in the future. Like, feel free to contact me anytime.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely have your book and your website and your course linked in the show notes too. So if anyone is interested
Great.
in looking more into those, yeah, I definitely recommend. But yeah, thank you just so much for your time, for your wisdom, for just like being so deeply devoted to this work. Like I can tell that you're just so deeply devoted and it's so needed. It's so necessary, especially now more than ever. So just, yeah, thank you so much for all that you do and for being here, for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Holly. It's I had to heal myself first, and
Yeah.
I think that's where, my passion comes from. It's just, you can do it. It can be done, because for years I thought that anxiety was a life sentence and I was never going to get out of it. But it
Mhm.
can be done. I had to find a way to heal myself, and then I just share it with other people. So thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Yes, beautiful. Yes, well, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday. Bye. As we wrap up today's episode, we want to extend our deepest gratitude for joining us on this journey. Your support does not go unnoticed. If you enjoyed this episode and find value in our conversations, please take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also allows us to reach more people who can benefit from our community of healing and support. Every review, every rating makes a difference. Thank you for being a part of the Multiple Truths podcast family. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Multiple Truths podcast. Keep speaking your truth and spreading your light. We love you, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday.